Just over 2 weeks ago, world leaders met in New York to discuss how to tackle climate change. Over 100 heads of state attended the UN summit, although Prime Minister Stephen Harper was not one of them. Opposition parties, including Green Party leader Elizabeth May, were critical of Harper's decision not to attend. May has now written a new book detailing how the government's record on the environment spurred her to get into politics. Why does May say Canada's environmental policies have damaged our reputation internationally? Joining me now, Elizabeth May, longtime environmental activist, of course the leader of the Green Party, and now author of a new book called Who We Are, Reflections on My Life and Canada. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You start your book by saying that Canadians see themselves one way. I think that's probably fair, that a lot of Canadians consider ourselves a particular way, but we behave another, and that we don't really deserve all our good press. That might get you having some eyebrows raised at you. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think we think of ourselves as, the guys in the white hats. And we also think we're very environmentally conscious. But I look at it, since 1980, the levels of solid waste from Canadians has gone way up. The amount of, we've got our blue box on the curb, so we think we're recycling, but the reality is we waste more than ever, we pollute more than ever. It's not, a matter of blaming Canadians for this reality, but I think when Stephen Harper has basically held a mirror up to us and said, this is who you are, and a lot of Canadians have said, no, we're not like that. We're really caring, and we go into peacekeeping missions, and we're not a warrior nation. I think, let's look at who we are, because we are a wonderful people and a wonderful country, and how do we become the best of what we can be?
But at one point you say that we are actually a bit smug.
Yeah, we are. Well, we are.
Because are we lying to ourselves about our contributions to the world, or are we miscasting ourselves? Explain to me why you think that.
Well, I know that when Bono said the world needs more Canada, and I was
who
so
could forget that?
chuffed.
Yeah.
Yes. And we loved it when U.S. kids used to sew Canadian flags to their backpacks. Kids don't do that anymore, because if they're hitchhiking through Latin America, a Canadian flag brings to mind the Canadian mining companies and the damage being done in Latin America. What's happened is that Canada's actions in the world have changed, particularly under Stephen Harper, but we were never quite as good as we thought we were before that either. And so our reputation in the world has taken a tumble, and we're not so aware of it within Canada. We're not really thinking, we're not really willing to face how the rest of the world sees us now.
You talk a little bit about that when you talk about attending the UN climate conference. It's funny because I attended a UN climate conference as a journalist about a week ago, and some people were asking me where I was from, and I said Canada, and they said, oh,
yeah.
You guys aren't really doing so much.
Yeah.
So tell me the perception then, or the feeling that you've had on the world stage when you get into places like that.
One of the more bizarre conversations I had was the last climate negotiations, which were in Poland, and a Saudi Arabian diplomat regretted our pulling out of Kyoto and said to me, as he sort of patted my shoulder, I said, I'm so sorry, our government's, it really was only supported by the minority of the Canadians in the vote. I'm really sorry. He said, it's all right. A lot of us know this isn't really Canada. Saudi Arabian diplomat. Meanwhile, I have people, who, as soon as they realize you're Canadian, start saying, why do people even bother to come here? You say, well, look, I'm leader of the Green Party. It's not my fault. We don't care. You're Canadian. So the anger is now visceral, and it started.
Okay, but Canadians also chose this government and chose the ideas that this government represents.
I don't recall Stephen Harper putting on any campaign platform that he planned to fight climate action, that he planned to pull us out of Kyoto. That was never even mentioned in any campaign. Canadians never chose that. And of course, this is why I wanted to share something of an institutional memory. I have a good memory. And the way in which our climate policy has evolved from before the Rio Earth Summit. I've been there. I was part of the discussion in the Mulroney government. I've been part of the discussion through all this time, not just on the sidelines, but fighting for real climate action. And so it's tragic, really, tragic, that a country with such good intentions, where the majority of Canadians at 80% want climate action, and are so unaware of, not only have we not done it domestically, we've opposed progress globally. And so in the sense that I mentioned how Lloyd Axford used to say we punch above our weight, when we're the good guy country, we punch above our weight. And when we're fighting climate action, we also punch above our weight and do way more damage in international meetings than Canadians realize. And that's why we get that reaction when we, as you experienced, show up internationally.
Let's talk about the state of democracy, which is another big part of this book, and I know a big part of what you want for the country as well. And I think you're friendly with Mr. Rathgaber and some of his ideas.
Yeah.
What, at this stage, do you think Canadians can do to improve things? You have limited things that you can do inside the House. What do you think Canadians should be doing?
What we need to do is make sure that the health of Canadian democracy is a ballot box issue in the next election, and we get firm commitments from all of the big party leaders, so Harper, Trudeau, and Mulcair, and we know where Harper is on this. We've got to force them to accept that they will dismantle the kind of power the Prime Minister's office has accumulated, allow members of Parliament to represent their constituents again. Michael Chong's reform bill, which has been watered down quite a bit, but it did receive support. That's one opportunity. But I think it's critical that we identify that the Prime Minister's office, regardless of who the next Prime Minister is, has far too much power to be healthy for democracy.
That's a hard thing to give up, though. It's much easier to govern when you have a fair amount of control over the people around you.
Dictatorships are ideal for the dictators.
I didn't use that word.
Well,
That's
no,
yours.
No, I will. It's an elected dictatorship. If the Prime Minister's office runs everything, it's a perversion of Westminster parliamentary democracy. It's unconstitutional, anti-democratic, and appalling. And yet, we have a generalized sense that that's the way it morphed. Well, it is not acceptable in a democracy run through the Westminster parliamentary system where all MPs are supposed to be equal to allow a Prime Minister to act like a president, but with none of the checks and balances that the U.S. system has. So it's the worst of all worlds, except for the fact we get an election every 4 years. I don't want to see another elected dictatorship. I want to make sure we have democracy.
Why did you write this book right now?
Well, I wanted to share ideas before the next election campaign. I write a lot of, this is my 8th book, I love writing, and I thought it would be helpful if we could share, if I could share climate science in a way that included a lot of personal anecdotes in terms of how I learned it. If I could share, well, who we are as a people, because I think we're at a crossroads. We are going to be the great country we can be again. But sort of my premise for this, I mentioned in the introduction, is it's almost a book like, when bad governments happen to good people, how did this happen to us? How do we get back to the kind of Canada we think we are? And that's going to take work, and it's not just going to be picking a different party, a different color. It's got to be that Canadians become active, engaged citizens, maybe for the first time, really engaged.
And you don't feel that we are?
Well, no, we've become a consumer culture. 40% of Canadians don't vote. I mean, it may not be popular to say it, but we actually have to say democracy is hard work. And our future is at stake in a very real way in the climate crisis. We only have so much time to make a difference. And we've got to do it together. It's easy to be cynical. It's easy to be discouraged. It's easy to be apathetic. But democracy will take work to recover it for Canada. And what I'm saying, I mean, we are very nearly not a real democracy when we only elect someone and wait till another election with only 60% of Canadians voting and endow in that person as a Prime Minister. We don't directly elect a Prime Minister. We elect our MPs, and our MPs have to work for their constituents and not primarily for political party power.
Okay, there's lots to think about there.
That's why I wrote the book.
Thanks, Elizabeth May. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.